She stood there, hands on hips like she owned the whole damn world, pointing at my grandfather's boat dock like it was some sort of crime scene. "You can't use the lake anymore," she said, grinning like she enjoyed saying it. "HOA rules. Lake access is for compliant members only." I didn't say anything at first, just looked past her oversized sunglasses and fake confidence, and stared at the lake my grandpa used to fish in every morning before the HOA was even built. That lake wasn't theirs. It never was. But my grandpa's land touches the shoreline, I said slowly, trying to keep my voice steady. "We've been using that dock since the 70s. She tapped a clipboard like it made her right. "Doesn't matter. New guidelines say no modifications or access without HOA permits, and this?" She pointed at the old wooden dock. "This is an eyesore. Might be grounds for a fine." That's when I realized she wasn't here to talk. She was here to intimidate. Looked over at Grandpa. He sat in his folding chair, legs shaking a little, but his jaw was locked tight. He hated talking when he was angry. Ever since the stroke, words came slow, but the fire in his eyes hadn't gone anywhere. I stepped in front of him. "This is his property." Karen, yeah, that's what we called her, clicked her tongue. "Not anymore. The lake's under shared HOA oversight now. We mailed notices. You're not in compliance." She walked away like it was settled, like she'd won. But something about how she smiled told me she wanted us to fight back. She wanted us to lose. I didn't sleep that night. I kept hearing Grandpa's voice in my head from years ago. Water never forgets where it came from. You just gotta know how to guide it. By morning, I had a plan, and it didn't involve paperwork. I started digging before the sun came up. Not loud enough to wake the neighbors, just enough to make progress. The back of Grandpa's property dipped low, and a small, natural runoff had always connected to the lake. Before the HOA filled it in for landscaping. They called it beautification. I called it theft. It took me 3 days. I worked between shifts at the mill, barely slept, and lied to Karen's patrol volunteers when they wandered by asking questions. "Just fixing drainage," I'd say, smiling like I didn't have mud in my boots and rage in my chest. By the fourth morning, I had rerouted the flow. Not much, just enough to guide the lake's edge down a path it used to take. A path that went straight behind Karen's house. The funny part? Her backyard was the lowest point on the street. That day, she came knocking again, this time with some HOA board guy behind her, clipboard in hand, eyes darting like he didn't want to be there. "We've received reports of unauthorized landscaping," she said sharply. "You're causing erosion, which violates—" "I'm restoring natural flow," I cut in. "Want to see the original survey maps?" She blinked. The board guy looked nervous. "You can't alter community water lines," she snapped. "It's runoff," I said. "From my land. Gravity did the rest." That night, it rained. Hard. By morning, half her precious garden was underwater. Those imported lilies, floating, her trimmed hedges, drowning. And just to be clear, I didn't smile, but Grandpa did. Karen came screaming down the driveway like a banshee. Mud splattered up her pastel slacks, and her left shoe sunk halfway into the grass that now squelched when you walked. "You did this," she screamed. "This is sabotage. This is war." I didn't say anything, but I had cameras rolling now, because what she didn't know was who exactly she'd declared war on. She filed 3 complaints that week. One for intentional flooding, another for threatening HOA authority, and the last one, environmental terrorism. I'm not kidding, she actually wrote that down on an official HOA form. Problem was, no one from the actual city office came. The inspector who showed up drove a rusted-out pickup and wore no badge, no ID, nothing. Said his name was Rick and tried to lecture me about manipulating watershed zones. "Who sent you?" I asked. "HOA directive," he muttered, avoiding eye contact. I stepped closer. "You with the city?" He paused. "I'm contracted." "Got ID?" He turned and left. Just like that. That night, I showed Grandpa the footage. The fake inspector, Karen yelling, her garden turning into a swamp. He didn't say anything, just nodded and tapped the armrest twice, the way he always did when something important clicked in his head. I knew what he meant. Time to push back, legally. The next day, I went into the town records office. Found the original waterway maps from the 60s. The HOA was built years after our property already had legal water access. The culvert they blocked? That was grandfathered in, literally. I scanned every document. Got it notarized, and just when I thought things were turning, Karen escalated. A letter came in the mail, bright red stamp on the front, eviction notice. She claimed we were in violation of community harmony laws, and said the board had unanimously voted to begin forced removal procedures. It wasn't real, of course, not legally, but it scared Grandpa. And that's when I stopped playing defense. I called someone I hadn't spoken to in years, someone Grandpa didn't even know I was still in touch with. Captain Ray Jenkins, retired Army JAG, my old CO. He picked up on the first ring. "You still dealing with land snakes?" he asked, like he already knew. I smiled for the first time in days. "You have no idea." Captain Ray showed up the next morning in a battered Jeep with a legal pad, a thermos of black coffee, and that same no-nonsense stare he used to level at corrupt base commanders overseas. We sat at Grandpa's kitchen table while Ray flipped through the HOA's letters, the fake eviction notice, and the video of Karen screaming barefoot in the swamp that used to be her garden. He didn't laugh, just underlined a few things and said, "She's impersonating authority. That's a felony." Then he leaned back, looked at me and said, "You got security footage, maps, and a witness who served in Korea. You got more firepower than you think." By noon, we filed for an emergency injunction against the HOA. Ray personally emailed it to the county clerk with a line that read, "Impersonation of government authority and harassment of a decorated veteran. Immediate review requested." That was the same day Karen tried to tow Grandpa's truck. We caught her on the driveway, phone in hand, shouting at some guy in a flatbed. The tow driver looked confused until she waved her clipboard again. "She doesn't own the road," I said, stepping between them. "Private property. You touch that truck and it's theft." Karen's lip twitched. "You can't stop us. The community has spoken." Ray stepped forward, slow and calm, like a thundercloud about to break. He pulled out a folded document and handed it to the tow guy. "This is a legal stay, filed under veteran protection statutes. You tow anything off this land, son, and you're going to court with her." The driver looked at the paper, then at Karen, then back at me. He left without saying a word. Karen screamed after him like a banshee losing her broomstick. "You're all trespassers, criminals, liars." She was shaking so hard her sunglasses fell off into the mud. She didn't even notice. And that's when Ray said the one line that cracked even Grandpa's stone-faced lady, "This ain't your kingdom, and he ain't your subject." That night, the storm came back, and this time the swamp didn't just reach her garden, it reached her basement. The flashing lights showed up just after midnight, not red and blue, but the blinding white of emergency, pumps and soaked utility workers. Karen stood outside her house wrapped in a silver thermal blanket, shouting at everyone like they were her servants. "It's sabotage," she screamed. "They're flooding my home on purpose. Arrest them." Or county emergency worker calmly asked for her HOA credentials. She handed him a soggy stack of papers with her signature at the bottom of each. "This isn't legal documentation," he said, flipping through it. "You're not an official authority. You're just a board member." Her face twitched. "I run the board," she snapped. "They voted me president. That's not how the law works," the man said, deadpan. "And this flooding? It's following the natural runoff channels. We just confirmed it. Your house was built in a drainage basin." You could see the realization crawl across her face. It wasn't my sabotage. It was nature doing what it always did, the thing she tried to block for years. And now it was coming back for her. She turned toward our property like a cornered animal. "This isn't over," she hissed. She was wrong. It already was. The next morning, someone else knocked on our door. It was Maria, one of the quiet neighbors who'd lived 2 doors down for years. Karen never liked her, said her yard wasn't up to community standard, and once tried to fine her for planting corn instead of hydrangeas. Maria didn't say much at first. Just looked around, then said, "She tried to get me evicted last year. Said I had unauthorized livestock. It was 2 chickens. Then she handed me a flash drive. "What's this?" I asked. "Everything," she said. "Board meetings, audio recordings, fake fines, even footage of her forging vote results." Ray plugged it into his laptop. Karen wasn't just entitled, she was rigging elections, silencing board members, and creating rules without votes. Ray grinned. "We've got her." Grandpa just sipped his tea, calm as ever. And finally, after all those days of silence, he said, "She forgot one thing. When you block the flow, the water finds another way." By noon, the flash drive was in the hands of the local news. Ray made sure of that. He had contacts, old ones, and one of them just happened to work behind the scenes at Channel 9. They aired the story the same evening, right between weather and sports. The headline read, "HOA president accused of forgery, harassment, and illegal board control." And there she was, Karen, yelling on video, slapping papers out of someone's hand during a board meeting, forging signatures with the same blue pen she always kept tucked in her bun. The footage Maria gave us showed everything. Her threats, her faking votes, her laughing about it with her inner circle, saying stuff like, "They'll never know, most of them barely speak English." The comment hit hard. Maria cried when she saw it aired. People from the neighborhood started coming by quietly, leaving pies, handwritten thank you notes. One man, a retired Marine with a prosthetic leg, shook Grandpa's hand and whispered, "About time someone stood up to her." And then, the sheriff came. Not the fake one Karen once tried to send, a real one. Badges, paperwork, and a full legal team in tow. They knocked on Karen's door while the news van parked across the street caught the whole thing live. We stood on the porch and watched as she got led out in cuffs, still trying to talk her way out of it. "I am the authority," she screamed. "This is my community." The sheriff didn't even look at her. "You're under arrest for impersonating an official, forging legal documents, and filing false reports." Karen's face crumpled, like her world finally caught up to her lies. The crowd that had gathered didn't cheer, but they didn't cry either. As she was shoved into the back of the cruiser, I noticed something. The lake in the distance looked calm again. The water had stopped spilling into her yard. The land had leveled out naturally, like it had, just been waiting for her to leave. Ray clapped me on the shoulder. "Told you, some people forget. Nature always wins." And Grandpa? He just smiled. For the first time in a long time. A week later, the HOA board held a public vote. Real this time. No fake papers, no Karen whispering behind closed doors. Maria was nominated as interim president, and no one objected. Not a single hand raised against her. She looked nervous up there, holding the mic with both hands, but her voice was steady. No more fines without proof. No more fake rules. And if you think you're above the people who live here, you're next. That got a standing ovation. Grandpa didn't attend the meeting. He didn't like crowds anymore. But I brought him a copy of the new charter they drafted. He traced the words with his finger slowly. When he got to the part about property rights being permanent and not subject to HOA whims, he let out a breath and said, "Good. Took him long enough." But just when we thought it was over, a letter came in the mail, thick envelope, no return address. Inside was a photocopy of Karen's original HOA land deed, with one major detail circled in red. Her property line had been wrong for 10 years. She'd been illegally claiming 2 extra acres, including the section that gave her access to the water. Ray looked at it and whistled. "She's not just a fraud. She's a squatter." I checked the public records myself, and he was right. That swampy piece of land she'd fought so hard to control, it wasn't hers. It never was. and now by default, with the corrected borders. It belonged to us. I stood there holding the papers, stunned. We hadn't just restored the flow. We had legally reclaimed the land Karen had tried to steal. The dock, the lake access, even the soil her precious garden used to sit on. It was ours, now officially, permanently. Grandpa looked up at me and said, "You gonna build something?" I thought about it. "No," I said. "I'm gonna let it grow wild, just the way it was before they showed up." He nodded. Smart boy. The new signs went up 2 days later. No HOA logos, no fake warnings, just a simple wooden post by the waterline, hand-painted in bold black letters. Private property, access restored by order of county court. Neighbors came by just to take pictures with it. Some laughed, some got emotional. Maria brought lemonade and sat with Grandpa by the dock, telling him how her chickens were doing better now. A little girl from the next street over dipped her toes into the water for the first time in years. Life was quiet again, peaceful, but it wasn't just about land anymore. People started talking to each other again. The invisible walls Karen built, fear, silence, control, they were crumbling. A neighborhood that used to walk with heads down now stopped to say hello. Folks waved when they drove by. They smiled. Then, one morning, Grandpa asked me to wheel him down to the edge of the dock. The same dock Karen once called an eyesore. He looked out over the lake for a long time. Then he said, "She thought a clipboard made her powerful." I didn't reply, just listened. "But power," he continued, "comes from standing your ground, not pushing others off it." There was silence between us for a while. The water lapped gently at the shore. Birds skimmed the surface. Sunlight hit the swamp that used to be her garden, now just wild land, untouched, untamed, and perfectly out of her reach. I looked at Grandpa. Was it worth the fight? He didn't look away from the lake when he answered. I didn't fight. In 2 wars just to be told where I can and can't sit in my own country. That was it. The line. The one that stayed with everyone who heard it. I didn't fight for this land just to watch it be stolen by someone with a clipboard. The HOA still exists, but it doesn't rule anyone anymore. Karen? Last we heard, she moved to a condo 2 towns over. No lake, no garden, no power. And the water? It still flows. Exactly where it's supposed to.